Hello and welcome to Writers and Books. I'm Sakshi Kumar, Adult Programs Coordinator at Writers and Books. For those of you who are new to us, Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center in Rochester, New York. We offer readings, workshops, a bookstore, and literary programming for people of all ages and backgrounds. You can find more information at our website, wab.org. Please say hello in the chat and let us know you're here. The chat and Q&A functions will be important to utilize. As tonight's workshop progresses, you'll be able to interact here. Misty will explain this after the introduction. Writers and Books would like to call attention to the complex and troubled history of the lands on which we live and work. We are hosting this event from the unceded ancestral homelands of the Onondaga, or the people of the Great Hill. In English, they are known as the Seneca people, or the Keeper of the Western Door. We're so happy to have Misty Yarnall with us tonight. First, you'll be joining Misty in a virtual workshop focused on drafting true stories about the choice of terminating pregnancy. Participating anonymously, writers will explore the journey, the final decision, and ripples of the choice. Discussions will be shared through Zoom's chat feature. Please have a pen and paper or Word document ready. Following the workshop, participants are encouraged to submit revised or new narratives to My Medea, a collaborative theater piece that will feature anonymous stories through movement-based storytelling. Submissions may be sent to mymedeasubmissions@gmail.com. Submissions are due by 5 p.m. Friday, March 29th. My Medea is an original genre-bending play featuring true stories by women in Rochester through the retelling of a classic Greek myth. The play aims to advance a better understanding of the complex issues of abortion within one's own community, start a conversation, create awareness, and spark advocacy. Misty Yarnall is a Rochester-based writer and teaching artist. She received her BA in creative writing from Purchase College and currently works as the Administrative and Communications Coordinator and the Youth Programs Coordinator at the Hudson Valley Writers Center. She actively teaches creative writing workshops through libraries, homeschool co-ops, and nonprofit organizations. She is passionate about creating brief spaces for people of all ages to share their stories. Welcome, Misty.
Thank you very much for that introduction. So as said, my name is Misty Yarnall, and I want to thank you for joining me tonight for Your Body, Your Story, Writing About Choice. Before we get started, I'd love to give a special thanks to the team at Writers and Books for helping to make this happen. And I also want to mention that this project is made possible with funds from the statewide Community Regrants Program, a regrant program of the New York State Council on the Arts, with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature, and administered by the Genesee Valley Council on the Arts. To give you a bit of context as to why I'm here, I wrote the play My Medea as an adaptation of Euripides' classic Greek myth, which, in a very consolidated summary, told a tale of a woman who seeks revenge on her husband by killing her children. While the idea of writing an adaptation of Medea skimmed in my head for quite a while, I was especially pushed to write this story in June of 2022, when Roe v. Wade was overturned. This news, of course, had a large impact nationwide. I saw many generic posts on my social media feed, ones that were easily copied and pasted and shared, stating to be pro-choice and how people would even put themselves in a position to help others find access to abortion care if need be. While scrolling through these social media posts, I didn't see a single person on my newsfeed share their own story as to how abortion access has impacted their life. And it made sense. Social media has never been that much of a safe space anyway. So this play is meant to be a platform. I wanted to take this international issue and narrow the scope to represent women in our community in Rochester, New York. We often see stories of life or death situations and unfair prosecutions in the news, but we might not be considering that women here in our neighborhood have stories that are just as valid in proving the necessity and complexity of having this choice. This workshop is generative, meaning we will complete writing during the hour. I find that sometimes the hardest part about writing is actually sitting down and doing the writing, so that's what tonight is for. Our goal today is to write something, not to perfect something. So please be messy, please be honest. I'd like to also note that the Zoom call is structured like a seminar, meaning that other participants cannot see you, and I also cannot see you. This aspect of confidentiality was important in the planning of this workshop. So if you have any questions, please feel free to message me in the Q&A function on the Zoom. I believe if you use the chat, it might not be confidential, so keep in mind to use the Q&A. And if it's a question that the group may benefit from, I'll answer it out loud at the end of the session. If it's a question that pertains specifically to you, I will send you a direct message. I have to move my picture. So the types of stories that could be featured in our performance, our intention is to represent a variety of experiences. We didn't want to hold the reins and dictate what stories are valid for the performance. So different types of experiences might include those, oh, sorry, okay. Those who contemplated an abortion but chose birth, those who felt pressures of religious or familial guilt, those in unsafe circumstances to raise a child, those who are not able to finish higher education or other personal or professional opportunities due to pregnancy, those who faced financial difficulties, those who carried an unviable pregnancy, those whose pregnancies were a result of a sexual assault, those whose age put them at risk, and those who have a story that does not fit into one of the categories above. So I can imagine some of you might be wondering how much personal information could be included in these narratives, such as names, dates, etc. My advice to you at this point in the process is to include everything. Tonight, I'm encouraging you to be your most genuine self and to write your truth. Do you have to submit all of it? No. You can write an H-page narrative and only submit a paragraph if you choose. Or you can walk away from this workshop and not submit anything. But if you're constantly censoring yourself during your writing process, you might struggle to write anything at all. Remember, if you don't want it to exist in the world, you can always burn it later. So the first activity I'd like to do is called a writing sprint. So for a writing sprint, I set a timer for 2 minutes, and the goal is to write for the entire time. So you don't want to come up with the perfect answer. Instead, you want to come up with as many answers as possible. So you want to just keep writing. Even if you end up writing, Misty, this is the worst thing I've ever done. Why am I still writing? The goal is to just write for the entire 2 minutes. So I will go ahead and set a timer. All right, so the first prompt is to write a list of reasons why your choice felt necessary. 2 minutes, go ahead. All right, that was the 2 minutes. Take a moment, just finish up your sentence or your final thought. And then go ahead and shake out your fingers. All right. So I have another sprint. Same deal. I set a timer for 2 minutes and you write whatever comes to mind. So the next sprint is to write a list of images or objects that you associate with that time in your life. 2 more minutes on the clock. Go ahead. Great, that's the timer. So go ahead and take a moment, finish up your thoughts. So I have one more sprint and then we're done with the writing sprints. So same rules, 2 minutes on the clock, write down anything and everything that comes to mind. Your question is to write a list of anxieties you have about writing/sharing this story. right. Go ahead and finish up your thought. So, congratulations. You've just completed your first writing prompt of the evening. I'd like to thank you for your participation in this exercise. And I'd like you to take a moment to reflect to yourself about what you've written, but also what the process of writing it was like for you. So far, have these prompts been helpful or frustrating? Without any sort of judgment, just acknowledge. If you'd like to take a moment to jot any of these thoughts down, or even just stretch your hands or get a glass of water, feel free to do so. We'll take a moment before we move on. All right, so the next section of prompts is writing in form. And so there's a couple different options that I have listed here, but these options are completely optional. So the first one you see is write your story in the form of a letter to a loved one. And the second one is write your story as if you've been interviewed on a talk show. So sometimes constricting yourself to a certain form that you follow helps kind of narrow in on what you're trying to say in a different way than if you're just kind of writing it as a story. So, again, I challenge you if you can think of another form that you'd like to use, feel free. If not, choose one of the two forms that I've offered on the screen and see what happens. This one isn't a sprint. You don't have to keep writing for the entire timer. But I am going to set a bit of a longer timer, about 10 minutes for this one, and then I'll chime back in soon. All right, that is the timer. Take a moment to finish your sentence or your thought. So maybe you followed one of the prompts. Maybe you started one and switched to the other. Maybe you spent all 10 minutes on one and are curious about the other one. You can always take these prompts with you as well and do them later on. So for the next prompt, some poetry. If anyone is a fan of poetry. If you're not, give it a try. There's nothing to lose here. So think about that second writing sprint that we did and think about those different images or objects that came to mind that were on your list and see if you can find a way to sort them into a poem. For this one, I'm going to set the timer for a little bit less time. I think I'll only set it for 5 minutes here. Um, but just like we experimented with form on the last one, think about how could this poem take a unique shape, or how could it rhyme or not rhyme? Think about the different choices you can make on how to arrange these different images. All right, that's our 5 minutes. Take a moment just to finish up. So now that we've done a couple different prompts and your hands might be cramping up, um, again, take another moment to kind of take inventory of where you're at, what you feel like is working, what hasn't been working. Feel free to check in the chat if you'd like to just say hello. We're going to move on to another prompt, but I encourage you, if you need to take a break to grab a drink of water or to stretch your legs, feel free to do so at any time. It is quite a bit of writing, but these are also prompts that you can take with you, or if there's one that already kind of was working for you and you want to continue working on that instead of moving on to the next prompt, all answers are acceptable. So the next prompt is writing as someone else. So you are going to write from the perspective of someone who would not agree with your choice. What would they say or think? And this can be a real person in your life, or it can be a fictional person for the sake of this exercise. But take yourself out of your own body and out of your own experience and try writing from someone else's. Because of the time, I think we'll do a 5-minute timer on this one as well. All right, that was the timer. Take a moment to finish your thoughts. All right. We're in the home stretch. We only have about 10 minutes left tonight. Um, so I think we'll end with one more prompt. So this prompt is easy, or maybe it's hard. I'm not sure. This is, what are we missing? So now that you've completed several prompts tonight, what prompt was missing? What is something that you wanted to say that didn't really fit in any of the questions or the structures that were given to you? This is a good moment to kind of take a look at what you've written, to acknowledge if there's anything that feels important to you that hasn't made it on the page yet. This can either be a brand new excerpt or you can continue writing one that you've already started. But just kind of take a moment to see what feels like it needs to go on the page still at this point. And I'll set a timer for another 5 minutes. right, that's the end of our time. So once again, I would like to thank you all for joining me tonight. I don't know if I have another slide after this. I do. So here's some additional information. Um, so we are accepting submissions until the 29th of up to 1,000 words. These stories will be translated into some movement-based storytelling and monologues in our performance of My Medea. The submissions will remain anonymous. I am the only person who checks this mymedeasubmissions at gmail.com. Any identifying information like your email address, your name, anything that is on the submission will be removed and will be kept anonymous. And the performance will take place at Writers and Books on May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at 7:30 p.m. Admission is completely free. So even if you choose not to submit something, we hope that you still come out and see the show and hear what some others have to say about their experience. That's really all I have for tonight. Thank you all for joining. And again, thank you to Writers and Books for hosting this event. And take care.
Thank you, Misty. That was such a thoughtful and generative workshop. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. As a reminder, like Misty said, you can email your submissions to mymedeasubmissions@gmail.com by March 29th. And yeah, have a great night, everyone.